All right, welcome back. Welcome back. We are here with Love Us Anyway, powered by Facts Wellness and Retreat Center. I am here with the lovely Donna Ray. Welcome, Donna.
It feels so good to be here.
It
Yes,
feels so
thank
good to be
you.
back. And so, yeah, our topic in this session is communication. Communication. And I don't know, I might say that and people are like, communication, like who has time for communicating with anybody in whatever way and whatever you as Donna raises her hand for those who can't see, right? Yeah, communication. Communication is a big deal. Matter of fact, communication is one of those things that'll make or break a relationship. And that could be work, friend, family, spouse, partner, like, right? Communication. Communication on
I mean,
all
that's
levels.
what that's we relate to one another communicating.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think it's a skill that it's a topic and it's a skill.
Yeah.
And skill in the meaning that we can get better at how we communicate.
Yeah.
And so I can remember first time I took a class was probably over 5 years ago. It was just mindful communication. And I
Mm,
learned so much about how to communicate.
mhm.
And so I'm so glad that you're bringing this topic up because I personally struggled with expressing myself,
Mm.
right? It seems like there was some people that just kind of hog the conversation,
Mhm.
and I was always trying to wait to get to be able to insert myself to have part of the conversation
Mhm.
and to to be able to contribute. And then that was a big gap for me. And then also being like misunderstood. Oh no, and people say, "Oh, I didn't know that's what you meant," like that. So that's why I'm saying
Mm.
it's a skill to be able to express or share my thoughts about something and feel the most solid in that.
You know what? I love that you said that because you said being able to express myself and so that people not only can hear me, but understand what I'm trying to convey, right? And that's a big deal because we all communicate on a daily basis, whether or not it's um received, in particular ways by certain people or people, I guess that would be the question, right? Like our intentions are typically pure on what we're trying to communicate, but sometimes it may not come across the way that we're trying to deliver it, I guess. Yeah. And also what came up for me when you were speaking was the fact that sometimes it's hard to communicate. It's hard to communicate sometimes. And I sometimes feel like I'm that person that talks too much and doesn't allow enough space. And I know that I try to be intentional about stepping back a little bit. And then there's sometimes where I'm like super excited about whatever it may be or whatever. And I feel like I may give too much. Um, but I guess that's the noticing. So that comes with noticing what, role you're playing in communicating with somebody.
Where I'm working now, I've been there over a year,
Hmm.
and I know that I'm very sensitive about this topic,
Hmm.
because people, what I observe is that people share a lot of things that are not part of what we're talking about, right? It's like a
Mm.
lot of background or how they're feeling or what somebody did to them. And for a while, probably the first 6 months, I was exhausted because it was so much that was going, people were sharing so much that I didn't know how to process it. And
Mm.
so now what I know is that everything we do is to meet a need. And that's the foundation, like even for communication. So they may not come up to you and say, "Oh, I borrow a pen,"
Hmm.
right? Like that could be something very direct, but it'd be like, "Oh, I was rushing this morning. I had my keys, and then I had my bag, and like all this other part of the conversation." And they may never say, "May I borrow a pen?" And so, but that is part of some of their need also to
Mhm.
to be creative, to be expressive, to be spontaneous, maybe even to something to be efficient. So
Mhm.
that might be what the need is. And but the pen is the object in order to capture, to write a list.
Yeah.
And so when I think about that, what comes next is kind of like this zero step, right? Like you and I, that's how we met. That's how we know each other is from mindfulness,
Yeah.
going through mindfulness teacher training. And so that first step is, well, that zero step is to find some stillness, is
Mhm.
to connect with myself
Mhm.
before I say, I start using words, right? So just having a moment to really slow down with myself
Mhm.
so that I'm more clear.
Okay.
And I think that has really helped me definitely in a work context.
Yeah.
And then all other relationships after that, right? And so the word that I thought I heard you say is being intentional, right? So when I can touch into myself, what is the intention of having this conversation?
Mhm.
Or what is it for me? Maybe I'm the listener in this. Maybe
Mhm.
I'm the person that would be able to provide said tools in order for you to do your task,
Mhm.
but to really tap into myself. That's what the zero step is. Starting with me.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, so when you said the zero step, starting with me and what my intentions are and what I'm trying to convey, that reminds me of a saying my mom used to say to me all the time when I was little. She'd be like, think before you speak. And I used to be like, well, I am thinking before I spoke, or else I wouldn't have said what I said because I thought about it already. Now, as I started to develop and grow into adulthood, I'm like, oh, that's what she meant because I didn't when she said think before you speak, I'm thinking, well, I did, right? So I thought because I said it. She's like, no, give it some care, give it some time, like really process it before you just blurt the thing out that that may either offend somebody or may not be what your intentions were. And so what I thought about while you were saying that was, yeah, like giving something some space before you just communicate that thing, and kind of giving it some time, and then how you would want to maybe receive whatever it is that's being offered. Think about that too. And being able to communicate effectively has a lot to do with how we convey information and whether or not it's clear and whether or not it's understood by other people. And when we communicate, we're fostering this thing, this building of connection and love and collaborating. And also in communication comes with listening and listening actively. Because for me, I have friends that don't listen actively. And I'm a big stickler on, did you hear what I said? Repeat what, you know what? Summarize that back to me. That's important to me because that lets me know that you're actively listening versus just hearing the words that I'm saying and picking up pieces throughout to be able to engage in a conversation. For me, it's important to be able to verbalize what I said. Now, I'm not asking everybody that I'm in conversation with to repeat back what I just said, but I know that I have a select few friends who, you know, um, have a hard time listening to actively listening. Let's say that.
Right. To track, right? To
Yeah.
track what you're saying.
Yeah.
And just to keep up, but then also understand.
Yeah.
Because I know I've been guilty of that with certain people. They just talk, 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 and they said something 8 minutes ago that I want to respond to, so I haven't heard anything in the past 8 minutes
Hmm.
because I want to remember the thing that I want to share.
Right.
So having those kind of incremental every minute or so to pause, make eye contact, and then
Hmm.
that way that other person can be like, oh, well, I think I do remember us talking about that, or whatever their response is,
Right.
right?
Right.
To have that kind of volley back and forth. To me, that's what a conversation is.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it's like a TED talk. Now you've been talking for 8 minutes, And then, I might be even out of the moment by now.
Right, and I done forgot what I wanted to say. Yeah,
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
and I
And
guess oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was about to say because sometimes it's a matter of inserting that pause when the person doesn't pause so that you can reflect on whatever you're experiencing that moment to be able to communicate that, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're living in the days and times when we are so easily distracted,
Mhm.
right? Like our attention is getting shorter and shorter. And
Is
so,
it?
well, what I mean by that is the phones,
Mhm.
the sounds, um, time,
Okay.
and I think all that influences, what's happening in this moment. And so, like today, I walked with one friend, and I left that walk and went with another,
Mhm.
another friend to have a walk. And so, I'm just really wanting to be intentional with the time that I spend with people. So it
Mhm.
used to be like I want to spend a day with them. That was a half a day. Now it's like 50 minutes. It's good because you have my undivided attention, and then
Yeah.
we can talk about the things. We laugh, we talk, we cry, we share stories, and then we're on our way.
Mhm.
And that piece of, I know it sounds more mechanical, but I scheduled that time with
Mhm.
friend A to meet, laugh, walk, talk, then
Mhm.
friend B to meet, laugh, walk, and talk.
Mhm.
And that really helps me. Then that way I can be focused on that relationship, on
Yeah.
that communication.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And that's understandable too. I mean, especially in the way I don't know, I feel like I've transitioned into that, right? Not necessarily scheduling, but sometimes I do schedule time for my people. And I know for me being a mom of four, I prefer to give people my undivided attention when we're speaking or we're having our time. And so what I know is that my kids do not allow me to have time when when I'm on the phone, or they could be paying me no mind prior to me getting on the phone. Hence, like somebody walking up to me right now. But they could be paying me no mind, and then I'm doing a podcast, son. So this is like real life in the flesh. He's slurping us. Can you hear that? Him
No,
slurping his drink and showing me his haircut. I'm still doing a podcast. I'm recording right now. All right. Your haircut looks good, son. All right, I love you too. See what I'm saying? So we talk about communicate, and I just said how often I'm trying to do something and I'm trying to communicate with people and I get interrupted. But what I said, what I wanted to say was I appreciate that scheduled time because I can say during this time, my kids aren't here or I'm not around them or whatever. And so I can dedicate some undivided attention to the people that I care about and love. And so that I can really hear them and receive whatever they're saying and message and actively listen. And then insert all of those qualities that come with communication, right? Expressing our thoughts clearly, providing some empathy or encouragement, some feedback when it's asked for, because oftentimes, sometimes we're communicating and we're like, well, I ain't asked you for your feedback or opinion, girl. Like, I just wanted you to listen. And
that
that's a
and
part of
that is
communication.
huge. That's a big part of it too.
Yeah.
To ask, uh, do you want me to listen, or
Hmm.
can I share some wisdom?
Hmm.
And then being okay with that also.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of, I guess the way it just kind of filters through me is that I do want to be sensitive to people's their lives also,
Yeah.
and what else they got going on. I'm a person, I prefer to talk to you, say, for 10 minutes than to have a text conversation off and on for X amount of days.
Yeah.
Um, So I'm learning to just make that request known. Like,
Hmm.
are you available today?
Right.
In the morning, the afternoon, you just kind of find out exactly when they might have that window and then have the conversation.
Right.
Um, and that is part of a lot of what I'm learning also. So it's a
Mhm.
lot of experimenting, but then also just like being okay with it,
Mhm.
right? So there is a structure to it,
Yeah.
and like it organically being part of who I am.
Yeah.
Since I know communications for me has been something that I didn't feel that I could really contribute to the conversation, or something somebody said, or their body language, like all of that would be in my head. And so that's why it
Mm.
was important for me to kind of understand the mechanics of
Mm.
communicating, and then adapting that to I can show up as my authentic self and still participate in
Yeah.
the conversation, in the relationship.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. Being your authentic self in the way that you communicate. And also, what stood out to me is when you said body language, because body language plays a huge role in the way that we communicate. And yeah, it conveys more than just words, right? So, our facial expressions, and I'm I have grown in this way, but I don't know that it works every time. Donna, I sometimes flip up in my face and you can tell what I'm thinking without me saying it all the in a lot of cases, right? Or maybe even our postures, our gestures, or um eye contact. That's important to me, especially in person. So on Zoom or whatever, we're kind of like and what do people say? I tend to look for my words or my thoughts or whatever. So I look around, right? That's supportive for me. But in person, when I'm talking to somebody, I love for them to give me eye contact. Like, look me in my eyes when I'm talking to you. And I, in return, do the same thing for that person because I feel like there's a connection here. And I want you to know that I hear you and I see you. And so, yeah, when it comes to body language, there's so many different things that we incorporate there. It tells us whether or not somebody's engaged, if they're maintaining eye contact, or their emotional things that they're going through with their facial expressions, like if my eyebrow raises or something turns up in my face, that's powerful too. And just like those unspoken words, if my arms are crossed, or if I'm like, my head is doing this thing or whatever, and that could mean different things too. But yeah, there's so much in that body language piece of communication too.
Absolutely. And when our we have that moment, that just that little bit of space to connect to ourselves,
Mhm.
then we might notice, like if I have my hand on my hip,
Mm,
if my head is tilted.
yeah,
Because if there's a little bit of space, we notice that,
yeah,
and then can make an adjustment or not.
right.
Um,
'Cause I might wanna be in that space and just put my hands on my hip. When you dip, I dip, we dip, psych. But
Sometimes
yeah,
you gotta show people, and
yeah,
it's not always just with words.
yeah,
And like you said, it's with your presence, your
mhm,
body language, how you take up space.
yeah, yeah. And what you mentioned something. You said, or maybe you mentioned something that made me think about this, as far as being present with yourself. You said that. You said being present, right? So being present with yourself, oneself, is essential for effective communication too, right? Self-awareness, focus, mindfulness, calmness, intentionality, like all of those are important when communicating with people. So understanding our own emotions, um, being focused and present helps us in having conversations and being fully present in that. That calmness piece of just really being grounded a little bit kinda can help us prevent some overwhelm when communicating and talking to people. And this and also that we keep saying it, intentional, 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 intentionality, being aware of our intentions can really guide how we communicate with people, really ensuring that the message that we're trying to convey is what we're saying, and kinda noticing when it's not, because that's based on maybe your language or response, or not responding or whatever, like, we can kind of figure that out based on the communication. That's just a couple of different things too, like being self-aware is a big deal.
And I know this topic of communication, I mean, we could do a whole series on this.
Mhm.
And because there's some very specific elements, building blocks that folks can practice.
Yeah.
And so I think us starting just with that zero step of checking in with the self is
Mhm.
something for people to just kind of maybe put in their pocket. And I'll go ahead and that's kind of a tee up for us to do just a short practice
I love that.
of being present with ourselves.
Mm.
And I'm going to guide a body scan. And this is one of the foundational mindfulness practices is noticing the body because the body is always in the present moment. Our thoughts could be in the past or in the future, but our body is in the present. So go ahead and take a moment to be comfortable. So if that is seated or laying down, take a couple of natural breaths. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. Let the hands rest on the body or on the seat. Eyes open or closed. And starting at the top of your head, notice the forehead, eye sockets, cheek, jaw, all of the muscles in your face. Feel your neck and shoulders. Sense the rise and fall of your chest and belly. Feel the upper arms, the lower arm, and the hands. Feel the upper back and lower back. Feel your hips, the front of the leg, the back of the leg, down to the calves, the ankle, the feet, and the toes. Feel your entire body grounded in this moment. Maybe tingling, pulsing, throbbing, maybe even notice an ache or pain or tension. Just taking a moment to quiet yourself, to connect to what is happening for you in this moment. Rest both hands on the belly. Feel the warmth or the coolness of your own touch. A moment of self-compassion that you're able to give to yourself. Open your eyes or lift your gaze. Take in the sights, the sounds, the smells all around you. Wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, just to bring a little bit more aliveness into the body. Thank you for joining us. I love us anyway on the topic of communication. It's been a pleasure to be here with you, Fantasia, with our friends, our listeners. Yeah, and
It's
I look forward to the next one.
same for me. Lady, until next time.